إله إلا الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد وقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا صدق الله العظيم. My dear brothers and sisters, all praises are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one that has blessed us with so many blessings, and in particular the greatest blessing of all, which is that of our deen. And it's important for us as the year ends, it's not the Islamic year, but the believer can take reminders from every aspect of their lives. It's important for us to take account of how this past year went and engage in the process of muhasabah and accountability. How was my prayer this past year? How was my salah this past year? How was my connection to Allah this past year? How much knowledge did I gain this past year? How many books did I read about Islam this year? How many times did I listen to the life of the Prophet ﷺ and understand about the life of the Prophet ﷺ? How much have I learned and how much have I gained? How much have I practiced this past year? And then how can I do better next year? How can I do more than what I was last year? How can I do more in this coming year? Especially as we're getting closer to Ramadan. So it's important for the believer always to take a step back from the day to day. And we have that opportunity every single day in our salah. Several times a day, Allah gives us the opportunity to be appreciative, to be grateful to Him for all the things that He has given us, all the blessings that He has given us, this community which He has given us, all the things that He's blessed us with. We're able to take that time every single day. And it's not just something which we do to thank Him, but it's something that we need. Just like we need food, and we need water, and we need air. These are all in the physical realm. These are all in the realm of the physical. In the same way, we have a spiritual need. And Allah has given us the prayer and the salah as a way to fulfill the spiritual need. Because you and I, we all know that the physical realm has a limit. The physical realm has a limit. There's only so many donuts that you can eat. As you get older, the amount becomes smaller and smaller. There's only so much Netflix that you can binge. I know some of you will take that as a challenge, but there's only so much. There's only so much before you just feel empty. Like, what have I been doing? The physical world has a limit. And actually, in many ways, it's like that bottomless pit. The more you go, the more you realize there's no end to it, and you'll never be satisfied. But in the spiritual instinct which Allah has provided us with, when we engage in that connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we feel the need for connection, that spiritual connection, then we find that satisfaction. In today's khutbah, I'd like to talk about an intention and a resolution that all of us should make in this coming year, which is to broaden our understanding of our religion. And there's a lot at stake there, because your religion is your akhirah, your deen is your next life. It's not just about this world. Right? You spent 20 years to become an engineer or whatever profession, right? And even then you keep learning. But your religion is not something that is only limited by this world, but it's also what informs the next. So it's important for all of us to understand and to think and to read. And it's not enough to simply do what our parents did. Those of you who were born Muslim, it's not enough to do what your parents did. Those of you who converted, It's not enough to do what the people who introduce you to Islam or your friends or whatever. It's not enough to do that bare minimum. A lot of the brother came up to me and said, I left the masjid when I finished reading Quran at the age of 13. I left the masjid, never came back. I never came back until my own child was 5 years old and I wanted them to start reading the Quran. So from 13 to 35, I never came to the masjid. I had no connection with Islam or the Quran. And that bare minimum, my brothers and sisters, is simply not enough. There's a lot at stake. There was a study that was done 2 years ago, Pew Research. They do a lot of study on religions, and they've come out with some good studies on Muslims and so on. And there's even Muslims that they have on staff that do the research about Muslims. The Muslim researchers do it and lead it and direct it. And that study came out, and they asked people, do they still identify with the religion that they were born with? So identify is different from practice. Identify is like the bare minimum, like I don't do anything else. I don't do Eid, Jumu'ah, nothing. Pray, nothing. But I just identify as Muslim. Right? And so they said that a quarter of Americans of all religions, including Islam and Christianity and Judaism and so on, a quarter of all Americans no longer identify with the religion that they were born with. They no longer identify with the religion that they were born with. You're born Muslim, you're no longer Muslim. A quarter of Muslims no longer identify as Muslim. And it's the same because of the secularization of the world and of our society in particular. And so that's an inherent risk that we have took upon ourselves. An inherent risk that maybe knowingly or unknowingly we took when our parents came here, for those of us that immigrated. Unknowingly we took that risk. For some people, actually their deen was in danger and they moved here actually to protect their deen, and that's also the case. There's a different perspective. But the important thing here is that is a possibility. Now the silver lining and the beautiful thing is that Islam is the only religion where a quarter of the people who identify as Muslim are converts. It's almost like there's a replacement that's going on. That there's people who are no longer identifying as Muslim and they're replaced by someone who wants to be Muslim, who is eagerly and enthusiastically accepting of Islam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He protects our iman. So it's important for all of us to realize that the bare minimum is simply not enough. Right? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, what is that? We must change that input. And so it's important for all of us to seek knowledge and not just seek surface level knowledge, but to deepen our understanding of the deen. And I'd like to give you a topic today that I've been thinking about for several weeks on how to approach this topic, because it is in some ways a complex topic, but it's important for us to broach it. It's important for us to open it up because it's crucial for our understanding, and it probably affects every single one of us in our families. And that is the idea of differences of opinion. Differences of opinion and interpretation in our deen. And so it's a topic which I will definitely not be able to cover all aspects of in this khutbah, but I encourage you to seek out the resources and to do your own research as well throughout this year and to make that resolution, that you will study and you will perform what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in the very first verse of the Quran, which was Iqra, read. We all have to take it upon ourselves to do more than the bare minimum and to go and read. And so let's go ahead and talk about this topic now. It was in the hadith of Mu'adh that this topic is usually centered upon, the topic of interpretation. It's a beautiful hadith, the hadith of Mu'adh. Mu'adh ibn Jabal was a companion of the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ was going to send him to Yemen to be the teacher of the people. And the religious teacher of the people was he was their judge. He was the one who was the conflict resolution, the source of conflict resolution. If two people had a dispute about a contract or about their family or whatever, then they would go to the most wise person they knew, the religious teacher, to resolve the dispute amongst them. And so the Prophet ﷺ told Mu'adh, he asked him, he said, how will you judge between the people when you go to Yemen and when you become this teacher and this guide for people? And Mu'adh said, and this is important because it's coming from Mu'adh, it's not coming from the Prophet. That's what makes it beautiful. Because Mu'adh, he imbibed what's in the Quran, and he imbibed what the Prophet ﷺ, he took it all in, and this was his response. He said that I will judge between them with the book of Allah, with the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ said, what if you don't find the answer there? Because the Quran is 600 pages. It's a book of principles. It doesn't have every detail there, but it's a book of principles. So what if you don't find it directly in the Quran? Indirectly, it's there through principles, but directly, it's not there, the answer, yes or no. So where will you go? And Mu'adh said, I will follow your way. I will follow your sunnah. He said, I will follow your sunnah, O Prophet of Allah. And the Prophet said, and what if you don't find it there? What if there's a situation that didn't arise with the Prophet and it arose in Yemen? What will you do then? And Mu'adh said, أَجْتَهِدُ رَأِي وَلَا آلُ. He said, I will do my best, my critical best, to deduce the answer and to find that answer through what I know already, through the principles that have been laid out by that same Quran and that same Sunnah of the Prophet. And so he went. But what's amazing is Mu'adh came up with that after understanding the Quran and understanding the Sunnah, because the Quran tells us over and over again, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَفْقَهُونَ, so that you understand. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَفَكَّرُونَ, so that you think. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ, you engage. You use your mind which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. Allah did not give you a mind and then tell you not to use it. Rather, He gave you a mind and then He told you to use it. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he's asking Mu'adh, and he's asking Mu'adh in a way where he's saying that not every yes or no answer is going to be there. You will need to interpret it. You will need to interpret it. Even the Quran mentions الَّذِينَ يَسْتَنْبِتُونَهُ مِنْهُ. This is a beautiful word. It's maybe a word that you don't expect. Allah praises those who deduce from the book, deduction, that you take an overall principle and you take from it some other new content, some new knowledge that you form based off the principle. Allah praises those scholars, those people of knowledge who pursue knowledge so that they are able to then deduce from the Quran and take out from the Quran that the Quran is not this dead text, but it is something alive from which you can learn, from which you can interpret, from which you can engage. That is the beautiful thing. So is there room for interpretation? Maybe as you're growing up, it's easy to think of things as black and white. Either this or it's that. And that exists in Islam. There's plenty of things that are this or that. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Allah is one. That is a principle of the deen. There's no difference of opinion in Allah is one. But then there's the furu', there's the branches of the tree, there's the details. And in those, there can be differences of opinion. And so how do we as Muslims, how do we understand that? That is what I want to cover today in the remaining time that I have. And it's a big subject and it requires further elaboration, but it's important to broach the subject and to open it up, because in a way, It's validating the experience that you've had, that maybe your parents told you one thing, and then you went on Instagram or something and you heard something different. So what do you do? Right, what do? You go on TikTok and you see a 10-second video about something else. Well, my dad told me this, and this TikTok is saying something else. So what should I do? So what should I do? So it's an important matter that we must discuss. The next thing that's important for us to understand is that this difference of opinion, it existed even during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. There were situations where it was left open to interpretation. The famous example that's given is that of the tribe of Banu Qurayza. They were a tribe, and the companions were sent to go and meet that tribe at their location. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, pray Asr at Banu Qurayza. That means make sure you rush enough and you're quick enough that you're able to then pray Asr in Banu Qurayza. Don't stop and pray. Make sure you pray Asr in Banu Qurayza. So go quickly. Don't take your time. Don't dilly-dally. And so what happened was that halfway through, the Asr prayer time was ending. And so half the group said, we're going to pray Asr now because the time is ending. The other half of the group said, the Prophet told us, don't stop until you get there and pray Asr when you get there. And they said, yes, but we've been delayed and we've not been able to make it, so we should pray because the time is ending. And so half the group prayed. The other half of the group prayed when they got to Banu Qurayza. They returned to the Prophet ﷺ, and they were fortunate because unlike us, they could go back to the Prophet and they could ask him what was the right answer. And the Prophet ﷺ approved both of the answers. And that's mind-boggling because it's saying that both groups had the right to that interpretation. That they did their best. أَجْتَهِدُ رَأَيِّ وَلَا أَلُ. They did their best to think about what the correct judgment would be. And they sought the proofs and the evidences that they understood and that they knew from the deen. And they came to two different conclusions. And they were learned in their deen. They were learned in their faith. They were not going to it from a place of ignorance. Like, let's just do whatever. It doesn't matter. They weren't approaching it like that. They were saying, the prayer is about to end. The sun is setting. They had their evidence and their proof and their foundation that they were basing this interpretation off of. It wasn't just whimsical. It wasn't just based off anything. It was based on something that they knew from the deen. And at this time, it's important for us to understand that this difference of opinion is a possibility and that it exists. And that's all this khutbah was about. And what to do with that. That's my next topic. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal was told that there's a new book that's been released by a scholar called Kitab al-Ikhtilaf, the book of differences. It has all the differences of opinion in one book. And Imam Ahmad said it should be renamed to Kitab al-Rahmah, the book of mercy. So the scholars, when they understood differences of opinion, they did not see it as something that creates doubt. They did not see it as something which creates doubt, but rather they saw it as the inherent flexibility of our religion, the inherent mercy of our religion. As an example, the majority of scholars, they said that when you give the zakat al-fitr on the day of Eid, you must give that sa' of that specific weight amount of barley or wheat or whatever the stapled good is. Imam Shafi'i said it can be the staple. Rice, for example, if you're in certain countries where they eat rice, then you give rice. Now, if I was to give a bag of rice to a homeless guy today in Seattle, what would he throw it back at me? What do I do with this? I don't have any way to do anything with this. It was Imam Abu Hanifa that said that you don't have to give the barley or the wheat or whatever. You can give the value of it. So you can give the $15 or the $20 or whatever in order for that person to sustain themselves on the day of Eid. A small example. But it gives you an example of that flexibility that is inherent within the realm of interpretation, and the importance of interpretation, and the importance of using the principles that we know in the deen to then reach a conclusion, and to then stay within the boundaries of that interpretation. To stay within the boundaries of the deen, using that interpretation, not just to do whatever you want, but to find the resource within the deen in order to make those decisions in our daily life. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He helps us to do that. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. So once you come across a difference of opinion, what should you do? Because at the end of the day, that is the question that the average person has. Ya Shaykh, don't tell me about this opinion and that opinion. Just tell me, what do I do? You just tell me what to do so I can go and do it and I can go live my life. And the Prophet ﷺ, he gave us the tools to be able to do that. What did he tell us? The first thing the Prophet ﷺ, he told us, Istafti qalbak. Seek the fatwa. Literally the word is used. Seek the fatwa from your own heart. Some of you are thinking, that's dangerous. Walau aftaka nas. Even if the people, they give you fatwa after fatwa, seek the fatwa from your heart. Now, okay, you've heard the two sides, you've heard this and that. Now, what is it in your heart? What is your heart leaning towards? Number two, he said, Da' ma yaribuk ila ma la yaribuk. Leave that which is doubtful for that in which there is no doubt. Meaning, if you're in doubt with something, you're uncomfortable with something, even all your friends are doing it, your family members are doing it, or whoever's doing it, if you're doubtful, you're uncomfortable, the Imam is saying it, whoever's saying it, you're uncomfortable, then don't do it. It's not worth sacrificing your connection to Allah. It's not worth sacrificing your akhirah. If you're not comfortable, then don't do it. Simple as that. The third thing the Prophet ﷺ told us is don't engage in excessive argument after you have made your decision. That one of the signs of the hypocrite is that they argue and they are overly aggressive in their argumentation. They're overly aggressive trying to make their point because it's coming from a place of insecurity. That I must be so aggressive about my point because I myself am not comfortable in my actual point. And I have so much doubt about my point that I'm going to be aggressive towards others. The scholars, they actually said you cannot condemn someone over a difference of opinion. If it's an absolute black and white, the black and white situation, right? Based on real knowledge. Some people, they see everything as black and white, but black and white based on real knowledge, not ignorance, then there is correction there. But in differences of opinion, there's no condemnation. You cannot condemn someone for where there is legitimate scholarly difference of opinion. It's important to understand. Number four, the fourth and final thing is how we understand unity. And I mentioned that verse. Allah says, hold you, all of you together to the rope of Allah and don't differ. And so what does that mean? What does unity mean, my brothers and sisters? On the day of Eid, I go to Eid. And when I want to go to Eid, I want to dress in my cultural clothing. The clothing that my parents and my grandparents wore to Eid. That's what I want to wear. And my brother, he wants to wear a suit and tie. And we all have that guy in our family. Nothing against suit and tie. I'm not saying it's haram or anything. But the whole family is wearing one thing and this one guy has to wear something else. Right? Does unity mean that everyone does what I do? Does unity mean that you must all unite? Yeah, we can all unite as long as you do what I do. Or is unity that I go with my brother to the same masjid? I don't create a different masjid that's a suit and tie masjid than the cultural dress masjid. But I go to the same masjid with my brother because this is not a matter of an asl, a black and white absolute thing in the deen, but this is a matter of difference of opinion. This is just a detail of the religion. And what's more important is that we both go to the same masjid and we pray right next to each other. And then after the salah, we can decide, do we want to do 3 hugs or 1 hug? Right? So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He helps us to understand our deen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He helps us to pursue the knowledge of our deen in this coming year, that He increases us in knowledge, that He blesses us in our knowledge. We ask Allah that He helps us to practice our knowledge. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He helps us to gain that connection to the Quran and that understanding of the Quran, of His book. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He helps us to follow the way of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He forgives our misdeeds and our mistakes and our sins in this past year, and that He accepts our good deeds, and that He increases us in good in this coming year. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accepts from us all of our deeds, and He helps us to prepare for the coming month of Ramadan in just a few months. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم ولذكر الله تعالى أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون وأقم الصلاة.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah, hayya ala falah. Qad qamate salah, qad qamate salah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah.
So, straighten your rows, fill in the gaps, shoulder to shoulder. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Before you go, just a few announcements, inshallah. Please donate, make your donations of your pledges before the end of the year in order to maximize tax benefits or matching and so on. There's a family potluck next Friday, inshallah, after Isha at 7 p.m. Please bring a dish to share and socialize as we kick off the winter quarter. I teach a Names of Allah class after Isha on Wednesday. That'll be this coming Wednesday. Our Sunday school is open for second semester registration. We do reopen the registration to give everyone equal opportunity, those who might have missed the first registration because it was full. So current families as well as new families will need to re-register, inshallah, on our website. We're doing our second semester of the MAPS Quranic Arabic program. This one is something which we started in September, and we completed the first semester, and now we're starting the second semester. If you're not more advanced in your knowledge, you might not be able to benefit from it, but you're welcome to attend and see if it's right for you. If not, I would work on your reading until September, and then you can join the new batch. Learning to understand the Quran is very important, not just reading it in Arabic, but also understanding it in its original language. And that's the focus of that class. It starts, inshallah, every September and ends in every June. A few years ago, we did our Qalam scholarship, where we sent several of our youth to Dallas, Texas to study under Sheikh Abdul Nasir Jangda. And one of them now is the Imam of our masjid in Seattle, in MAP Seattle, Imam Akram. And so we're very proud to be able to send the youth from our community that are able to leverage the resources. And all of our students, 4 out of 5 of them were able to skip the Arabic year because they did Arabic in their own community. So it's something which we want to continue to be able to provide, and we want people to be taking that class, inshallah. We have basketball for boys and girls starting in the new year. You can visit our website to register. MAP Seattle has a Understanding Depression class after Isha on January 2nd. Sunday Tafsir with Sheikh Juban will resume in 2 weeks on January 15th. And the Muslim Experience with Brother Ala will restart next week on January 6th. Jazakumullah khair. Please donate generously to support your masjid. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.